Hey everyone, it's Tanja here from Kraus Horsemanship, and we are talking tonight about separation anxiety in our horses, which can be a really big problem for a lot of people. I thought I'd give it a minute or so to let Facebook notify you all that we've gone live, and those that are following Kraus Horsemanship will get a little pop-up notification saying Tanja Kraus Horsemanship is now live, and you should be either able to click onto that and it will take you to the Facebook page, or you'll be able to head to the Facebook page and you'll just see it there saying Tanja Kraus is now live or Tanja Kraus Horsemanship is live. So, you know, like we did last week, I'll give it a minute or so and just let everyone get settled in. And those of you who are starting to join the live feed now, you should be able to see a little button that says invite people or share or something like that. Hey Beth, welcome. And if you would know anyone who may be interested in the talk tonight, please go ahead and add them or invite them to the feed, and that way they know that it's been on. And even if they don't get to see it all tonight, they should be able to see it on the replay, which we are still currently posting the replays after the show. So anyone who misses out on anything like that should be able to find it tomorrow or tonight later on or whatever, when it gets, when the replay goes up. So as I said, tonight we're going to talk about separation anxiety in our horses, and it can be a really huge problem both for the horses themselves, and I know it can be a really frustrating problem for having a horse that does have separation anxiety. It can make it really difficult to go anywhere because you're worried about leaving the horse at home, or it can be quite difficult to take a horse away if they're going to be calling out for the horse that's at home, etc., etc. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is the different types of separation anxiety that our horses have, how we can help our horses manage that issue, and how we can hopefully help them manage themselves and get over the issue and not feel like they need to be back with the herd. So I can see that everyone's sort of starting to join in now, and obviously Facebook's gone ahead and done the notification, so I can see everyone starting to pop up. So welcome if you've started watching, and those of you that have just popped in, please hit the invite button or the share button if you know anyone who will be interested in this talk tonight. And the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to separation anxiety is that it is a very real thing for our horse, and I have seen horses that get separation anxiety from simply a horse being moved from the stable next door, and I have seen a horse stress in a stable when they could see their paddock mate that was less than 10 meters away. And for people, we certainly look at that and we say, oh, don't be ridiculous. Your paddock mate's right there. What's your problem? And we try and humanize it or apply some kind of human logic to it. And there really isn't a correlation to it that we can draw, that we can remember anyway. The human equivalent to it is those of you, it's really funny for me to talk about babies, but with Hana joining the TKH team and bringing little Milani to work, I get to observe a baby pretty frequently now. And when Hana leaves the room, sometime Milani will get really, really worried about it, because Milani doesn't know where Hana's going. She doesn't know how long she's going to be, and she, doesn't know whether she's just been sort of left alone, and she's still trying to figure that out. Hey, Gwenda. So that's the human kind of equivalent. We would understand that coming from a baby. So the same thing has happened with the horses, is something has happened to them in the course of their life which causes them to be codependent on another horse. And when that other horse moves away, they get, hey Helen, when that other horse moves away, they get really bothered by that, and that horse could still be within a really close range, but if they even have the thought that that horse is going to get taken away or that they're going to be separated for any period of time, the stress can really hit home for them. And once they start to stress about that, it can be difficult and challenging to get them back down, because it is logic to them. The horse's instinct is to remain within a herd, and if a horse has a particular bond to another horse, that is their herd and that's their safety. So for your horse, he gets worried, he gets separation anxiety because he literally feels that he could die if the other horse leaves or if he gets left alone. That's the reality of being left alone in the wild. So it comes from an instinctual place, and that's something that we have to recognize, that it does have a logical background to it, even though it might not make a lot of sense to us. So the next step after that, acknowledgement, is to understand that there's a couple of different types of separation anxiety. One is the horse that you take out of the paddock. So horse number one, you take it out of the paddock, and horse number one is worried and wants to go back to the paddock. So this kind of separation anxiety, even though the horse is with you, he still has a problem being removed from his paddock mate. The second type of separation anxiety that you get is the horse that gets left behind in the paddock is worried, but the horse that's with you is not worried. So the horse that gets left alone in the paddock starts calling out and gets really bothered that he's been left alone. Okay, that's number two. And then number three is the anxious horse that is actually both of those horses. So it's the horse that you say his name's, let's call it Cooper. Let's talk about my horse. He doesn't have separation anxiety, but let's say he did. If I took Cooper out of the paddock, he'd be worried. If I left him in the paddock, he'd be worried. So some horses are afflicted by both. Some horses, it'll be, if you leave them in the paddock, they'll be fine because they're safe in the paddock, or they've got the other horses in the paddock. Or if you take them away and if you take them away, they'll stress. Some horses, if they're the one getting taken out, will be fine, but if you leave them behind, they'll stress. So you need to identify which one of those that your horse is, because we're going to talk tonight about the three different kinds, or the ways to help with those issues. So I'm going to go through two different scenarios, or how to help those two different horses. And if your horse is one of the horses that suffers from both, it doesn't matter whether you take him out or whether horse number three, Joanne just said. So it doesn't matter whether he's the one getting taken out or whether he's the one getting left behind. He's bothered by everything. So you're going to work with both of the solutions that I offer, or both the methods. You'll work with both of those separately to build his confidence. So the horse that worries, horse number one, that worries when he's still with you, that is a leadership issue. So you go and get, Cooper out of the paddock. I go and get Cooper out of the paddock, and he starts calling out for the herd, and he frets when he's with me, for example. That means that Cooper doesn't identify me as a leader. He doesn't think that I can keep him safe, and he wants to go back to the safety of the herd. So this is what I call a leadership issue, and it means that you've got to improve your horse's opinion of you. Basically, you've got to prove to him that you are worthy of being his leader, and that you are capable of taking care of him and anything that you may encounter while you're away from the paddock. Horse number two that is happy to come out of the paddock but doesn't like being left behind, this is a confidence issue. So if he's got you, he says, yep, you're the leader, I'm all good, I'm not going to be worried. But if another horse leaves the paddock and he's left behind, he says, well, I can't handle this, I don't want to be left alone. That's a confidence issue, and we can help. I'm going to share with you some methods to help him build his confidence. And as I said, if you've got horse number three that is worried no matter which one he is, whether he's left behind or whether he's taken out, you're going to work on both of the methods, because it means that he does lack confidence, but he doesn't see you as a leader, and so he doesn't find the confidence with you. So we're going to talk about all three tonight. The first thing that I want to address is the the herd situation. So your herd situation is either helping you not have an anxious horse, it's either causing more anxiety in your horses, or it's going to help you work with your horses a little bit more. So when you have a look at your herd, what I meet is a lot of people that have maybe 2 horses in a paddock together, and those 2 horses are all each other have got. So this is probably the worst case scenario that you could have in terms of separation anxiety. So a horse left alone in the paddock is a completely different discussion. He can't really get separation anxiety because he doesn't have anyone to be separated from, and that causing him that anxiety at that moment in time. But the horse that's alone in a paddock suffers from all kinds of other psychological issues. Horses that are alone can't sleep properly, all that sort of stuff. Like I say, that's a completely different video. So horse by itself, let's just move that to the side, and we'll talk about horses that are within a herd and they're codependent on the horse that's in the herd with them. So the worst case scenario is going to be your 2 horses in the paddock by themselves, because basically you've put them in a situation where the only thing they can rely on consistently for 23 hours of the day is each other, and then you turn up at the paddock and you want to get one of them out to work, and that leaves the other one behind. So you're basically taking his entire world away from him, or you're taking them away from each other. So the way that improving your herd is going to help you is by putting another horse in that herd. So when you take one horse away, it leaves 2 in the paddock that can look after each other. If you're a person, hello Alexis, I'm sorry, we've had this conversation before. Yours is a little bit different, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So how you're going to help with this, if you've got 1 horse that you're taking out all the time, to put a 3rd horse in that paddock is going to help that situation, because the horses left behind have their own little herd, and then they're not calling out to the horse that's left, which is going to help that issue if the one that's with you is worried. Whereas if you've got 1 and 1, this one's going to be calling out and this one's going to be calling out as well. So they're just having that constant calling out to each other. Whereas if the one back in the paddock has got another horse to keep it company, then they're not going to be as worried when you take the 3rd horse away. If you are planning on taking 2 of those horses out in the paddock and leaving 1 horse behind, then obviously that's causing the same issue. So say your partner's got a horse and you've got a horse and you've got those 2 horses in together. Well, most of the time, I'm guessing, or a lot of the time, you've got the opportunity to actually take both of those horses out of the paddock together. And so introducing a 3rd horse to that mob isn't going to be a great solution, because then you're going to cause the separation anxiety to horse number 3. Meaning that you either need to stick with the 2 horse situation or add a 4th horse to the mob. So I can already hear people going, I'm not going to go out and buy 2 new horses. This is the worst live feed I've ever seen, because you've basically just told me to go out and add all these horses to my herd. But I wanted to talk about herd because the reality is that our horses are a herd animal. Their instincts and the way that they flourish the most is to be in a herd situation. So 2 horses is not a herd. 3 horses isn't really a herd. So really you start to talk about 4 horses. So without going into too many scenarios and this and that, I just want to touch base on that. Maybe you've got the opportunity to sorry Lex, maybe you've got the opportunity to share with a neighbour's paddock. So I've spoken to people in the past who have had 2 horses next door and 2 horses on this property, and what they've done is they've joined those 4 horses together, and now they run the 4 horses on one property and then they change the paddock to the next property, which has actually been beneficial for pasture management and winter growth and all that sort of thing. So maybe you've got friends that have got a similar situation where they've got a singular horse alone, and maybe we can talk about that. So I just want to put it out there that instinctually and the horses are meant to live in a herd, and so your herd or your paddock situation can be helping or hindering your situation. So I can see there Gwenda's asked a question saying, can cows substitute for a herd? Cows are definitely company and they're better than nothing at all, but they won't operate in a herd situation the same as, there you go, Hillary's got 9, see, perfect size. Cows won't operate the same way that horses will. So they do get along with each other and all that sort of stuff, or most of the time. Some horses are pretty cowy. I mean, my horse chases cows, so I can't put cows in with her. But if the herd gets along in that way, yes, from a livestock perspective, it's other beings in the paddock, but they won't offer the same kind of security as other horses, and they certainly won't have the same, they won't mutually groom together. They won't have the same understanding of protecting and guarding each other and things like that. So when a herd's going to sleep, for example, what you'll observe in a normal functioning herd is one horse will be standing up and all the other horses will be, it'll be their turn to sleep. And then one of those horses that are laying down or sleeping will stand, and then the one that was standing keeping watch will lay down and have a sleep. It's not very common. I know that it happens. It's not very common, and it's not very instinctual, so to speak, for the entire herd to be lying down at once. Typically, there's always one guardian standing up who's going to alert the herd to any impending danger. So I know that we often sort of think about danger and we say, you know what, we've got modern domestic horses, we don't have danger and all that sort of stuff. And it's simply not true. You know, even my horses run on 45 acres and we've got wild dogs in our area. So, you know, they have to keep an eye out for those. So don't think that we've domesticated horses to a point where they're not instinctual or they don't think that they have to protect themselves. We certainly don't know what goes on 24/7 in our paddocks, and those instincts are still in there with our horses. So when you've got a horse in a happy herd and a high functioning herd or a well functioning herd, there's all those sorts of dynamics that happen throughout the hierarchy, throughout getting appropriate rest, knowing when they're moving, when they're going to get the water, when they're going to graze, when they're sleeping. I'll notice, I certainly observe with my herd, that all of them will be at the water at the same time. All of them will be grazing at the same time. All of them will be sleeping at the same time with someone standing guard, and so on and so forth. So a herd will go a long way to fixing your horse's separation anxiety, particularly the one that is in the paddock, that lacks confidence in the paddock. It's important to note that, again, this is a really normal instinctual situation for your horse, so you can't punish a horse for being anxious. It's not something that's going to work. You can't go and tell him that he's wrong, because he's just going to look at you and say, you don't understand you don't understand the demographics of my herd, which means that I can't even look to you as a leader because you don't even understand why I feel this way right now. Once a horse has developed anxiety to a point where they're pacing fences and running up and down and whinnying and things like that, and it gets worse from there, you really can't leave them alone to work it out. It is a situation that needs to be addressed, and that's what we're going to start to talk about now, is some of the methods that I've used. I've had horses sent to me that have really high anxiety and that have become a danger to themselves. Horses will run into fences or structures, trip over things. I've had a horse nearly, basically tear down half an electric fence stand off because she couldn't see it because she was pacing up and down so rapidly, and then ran into the stable on the other side. So, horses will get themselves into a frantic state, and it's not something that's going to work itself out. It's something that we do need to intervene with. Both of the types, as I mentioned earlier, do need to be addressed separately. So what we're going to talk about first is the horse that is bothered when you take it out of the paddock. So this is the one that has a leadership issue. This is the horse that doesn't see you as a leader. So you go down to the paddock, you pull him out, and you start walking back to your arena or your car or wherever it is that you start getting ready, and he starts calling out, prancing on the spot, trying to pull away from you, any of the above that indicates to you that he wants to go back to the paddock and that he's bothered about being with you. So I want to take a sideline here and make sure that we're differentiating between the horse that just simply understands that the paddock means rest. My horses know that the paddock means rest, and so obviously, you know, a couple of glances back to the paddock to say, hey, I'd much rather be in the paddock eating grass than coming with you on the float today. That's not separation anxiety. That is your horse saying to you, it's way cool in the paddock because I get to rest and eat grass and sleep all day, whereas with you, I know that we're going to go somewhere and we're going to do something and we're going to work. So that, as I said, is not separation anxiety. You need to make sure that what your horse has is separation anxiety. So this is their heart rate increases, their breathing increases, they'll start calling out to the paddock, they'll start trying to pull away from you, they might run into you, they might bump you, they might prance on the spot, any of the above that indicates to you, hey, my horse is really worried, and he's worried because I've taken him away from his herd. So the first thing that we need to understand is that for a horse to see you as a leader, they need to see two things from you. They need to see that you're in control of the situation and that you know what to do. And they need to know that you can move their feet or exercise body control or whatever terminology you want to use. So the leader horse in the paddock, when you go out into a herd, most of you will be probably able to tell which horse is the leader. The leader horse in the paddock is the one that can and will move the other horses around at will. So if the leader horse wants to go and get a drink and there's another horse in the way, that leader horse will just keep on walking and expect for the other horses to get out of the way. He demonstrates and holds his leadership, or her, typically it's a mare, he demonstrates and holds his leadership by getting the other horses to get out of his way. He moves them, they don't move him. So feet control or body control or being able to move the feet. That's the second thing that your horse needs to see to be able to recognize you as a leader. So the first one is that you're in control of the situation, that you know what to do, and that you can effectively move his feet. So those of you that have attended my clinics before and things like that, you know that we've got our ground exercises, and that's a series of 10 ground exercises that we use in order to move the horse's feet, make sure that they're paying attention, disengage the hindquarter, which also has a physiological response in the horse's mind, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and all that sort of stuff. Whether you do have those ground exercises or not, I recommend that you have a set of some number of ground exercises that you can do on the ground that you are confident in performing, because that is what allows you to take control of the situation. If you think of being in a situation where you're worried or nervous, and maybe you have to evacuate a building or you need to go somewhere, you're looking to the person that's saying, everyone through this door, turn right, follow the exit signs, get out. You're not looking to the person that's frantically running around, not knowing what to do. So you've got to think that's what you're trying to show your horse when you're taking control of the situation. So you're saying to your horse, hey, we're going to turn here, you're going to move your hindquarter, you're going to move your forequarter, you're going to bend, you're going to go sideways, you're going to go through, you're going to lead, you're going to lunge, you're going to trot, you're going to canter. Any of those things or any of those series of exercises is saying to your horse, hey, listen to me, I know the answer, listen to me, I know the answer, I've got control of the situation. So that's number one. You need to have a series of exercises or something that you do in order to show the horse that you're an effective leader. The second thing is the moving the feet, which can be done via those series of exercises. We talk a lot in my courses about concrete shoes. So that ideology or that picture that I give to people of having concrete shoes is, if your horse is moving your feet, he is establishing himself as the leader. So even if your horse has lost control, even if your horse is calling out to the mob or pulling you or bumping into you, and that causes you to move your feet, that makes your horse say in his mind, well, you're not the leader because I'm moving your feet and I'm worried. I don't know what to do in this situation. I need to go back to who does know what to do. So it's something as simple as that that can cause your horse to say, I'm out. You don't know what you're doing. I've just moved you. Because our horses always know where they are and where we are and who's moving whose feet. Or I like to say, who's taking real estate. So it's important to have a series of exercises, even if it's the simple park exercise that we do, which is asking your horse to stand off you and stand in a certain location on his own without you having to hold him there. That simple act shows your horse, hey, I'm parking you, you're standing back there, and I'm holding my space. That immediately will begin to calm your horse down because he will understand that you have moved his feet, you've told him where to be, so you've taken control, you've moved his feet, and he isn't moving your feet. An accidental bump through the horse being frantic is enough to make him make that decision. And this is where a lot of this separation anxiety starts to build. There was once upon a time where your horse might have walked out of the paddock and gone, whinny, whinny out to the horse, and you seemingly, didn't think anything of it. He didn't really think anything of it. But during your walk back to the stables, he got a little bit bothered and might have bumped into you a couple of times. You've moved out of his space and your horse has gone, hang on a minute. You don't know what you're doing. You're not in control of the situation. And that's made him peak a little bit more. And that's made him go, you're not the leader. So you've slowly decreased in your leadership in his mind. And he's slowly increased his ability to move you, which tells him that he's the leader, which worries him because most horses aren't designed to be the leader. Not every horse will be the leader in the mob. It's a process that happens, via domination and ultimately death. When the matriarchal mare passes away, then the next one takes her place. But most horses won't be the leader and won't be the leader if they are for many, many years because there's already one there. And that's a whole nother video as well. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit of insight into where your horse is coming from and maybe how the situation got very bad. It can be a simple bump that makes your horse move your feet, and he immediately says, you're not in control of the situation and I've moved your feet. This bothers me. I need to go back to where I feel safe, which is in my herd. So the way the human can effectively do those two things is having the tools and knowing how to use them. So like I said, if you've been to my clinics, by all means use my ground exercises program. If you've got your own ground exercises or if you use somebody else's ground exercises, anything like that that's going to help you know what to do, that's when you need to go ahead and start implementing those ground exercises. So it's not the time to start trying something new or trying something that you're not confident with, because the horse is going to immediately recognize that you're sort of hesitant or you're stumbling or whatever. Even if all you know is ground exercise number 1, park, boom, park the horse. That's taking control of the situation, and it will give him some kind of immediate idea that you're in control because you have taken control of the situation. The second thing that I want to talk about that's going to be really powerful in helping your horse go through this is causing a physiological response in your horse's brain, which tells him that he's okay. So one of those things that we use is what we call the hindquarter disengagement or a hindquarter yield. So even though we use a hindquarter disengagement as part of a one rein stop when we're mounted, or as part of a control technique, or as part of a strengthening or suppling exercise, one of the things that we use our hindquarter disengagement for is the effect that it has on the horse's brain. So in circles, in horsemanship, we talk about the left and the right brain of the horse, which it isn't actually correct. The horses don't have a left and a right brain, but it makes it easier for humans to understand. So I'll continue along that line. So our left brain is where our horse is listening and they're actively responding to what we're wanting. And it's the horse's nice quiet brain. That's the one that we want to talk to all the time. The horse's right brain is his reactive brain or his instinctual brain. So when you see a group of horses in the paddock and they're all just eating grass, if something, a car drives past and backfires and scares them, you'll see all of those horses throw their heads right up in the air, and what happens is the adrenal gland starts pumping, they start sucking in a whole heap of oxygen, and their brains flick over into what we call right brain, or its flight brain. They'll all run for they'll all run for a certain amount of time, and at the end of that pathway, it's different for different breeds, they will all turn around and look back towards wherever the sound came from. And what that does is, and if you watch closely in the herd, what will happen is their hind legs will cross. The inside hind leg will cross in front of the outside hind leg. So what happens in that moment, the horse's brain flicks back into left brain, which is nice quiet brain, which is thinking brain, because it allows the horse to make a decision about what scared them. They can make an assessment. They can look and say, oh, it was just a car backfiring, or that's not there anymore, we can all keep eating grass, or oh no, there's a wild dog chasing us, let's keep running. It's this inbuilt physiological response that has helped the horse survive for all of this time, because if they just kept running, they would have just run themselves to death. There has to be, or there is, an inbuilt mechanism in there which allows the horse to get to a state where they can think, and then they can pop back into what we call flight mode, which is adrenaline mode, which helps them get that speed on. And as any one of you watching would know what that feels like when a horse bolts, or when the horse is completely glazed over and not listening anymore. That's reactive brain. Well, that, we don't like it, but that's in there to keep them safe as well. So that's something that we have to take into consideration, is that inbuilt physiological response that comes from the hind legs crossing over. So that's what we call a hindquarter yield, or a hindquarter disengagement in my ground exercises. And so that is the second thing that I would recommend for people to do. Park the horse first, because it gets him out of your space and you've controlled his feet. The second thing that I would recommend is disengaging the hindquarter, which causes those legs to cross over, which causes the horse to get into thinking brain and gives you the opportunity to communicate with him a little more. If you can learn a few more of your ground exercises, it can be really helpful to do some kind of circling or allowing the horse to move his feet, but you have to be really careful with circling or lunging, because if you just let him go onto the end of the lunge and run around in circles, this is bolting, okay? This is bolting online. So basically you're justifying the horse's anxiety and you're telling him, yep, go out there and bolt and bolt and bolt. And you think you're lunging him, but you're not. He's just running around you in frantic circles. So what you need to do is be able to change direction in those circles, get that inside hind leg crossing underneath so it keeps him in thinking brain in those circles, do lots of transitions. And what this does, when circles are done correctly, what this does, it calms the horse, because instinct tells the horse, I'm worried, I need to move my feet. I'm worried, I need to move my feet. That's why trying to make the horse stand still doesn't work. They get more and more frantic, they start prancing, they start wanting to butt you out of the way, all of those things that they want to do, because they say, I don't want to stand still. Nature's telling me to move my feet. Nature's telling me that I have to get away. So what you need to do is take control of those feet and say, you can move your feet. I know that's going to help you stay calm, but we're going to move your feet in a way that's going to help you build confidence, and it's going to help you actually calm down, not build the anxiety and think, well, I'm bolting and bolting and bolting and bolting, so there must be something to be worried about. So it's really important to be able to do those circles properly. the final thing that I'm going to recommend that you do with your horse when he's suffering from separation anxiety is the lateral bend. So when you bend your horse properly through his entire body, and I don't just mean taking his face, I mean taking a full bend through the body. What that does is it puts your horse, again, it has a physiological response on the horse that tells him, well, if I'm bent, I must be okay. Because when that horse, you remember that horse when they all threw their heads up in the air and they took off in flight mode, they were all straight. And if you look at a horse that's bolting through the paddock, they're pretty rigid and they're pretty straight when they're trying to get away. But once they start disengaging that hindquarter and looking back at whatever worried them, they put a little bend in their body. So the lateral bend is a really effective tool that you can use on the spot to help your horse be in a body position that tells his mind, hey, I must be okay because I'm bent. So just to recap those things that I would do with a horse with separation anxiety that's going to allow the horse or cause the horse to see me as a leader is controlling the feet or controlling the situation and controlling the feet. So knowing what to do and controlling the feet. And within those two headings, controlling the feet and controlling the situation and controlling the feet, comes our park, which is you stand over there, don't move my feet, I'm moving your feet. It's our lateral bend, putting his body in a position that makes him feel like he's okay. Hindquarter disengagement, flicking that brain over into thinking brain all the time. And then our circles with purpose. So you're allowing him to move his feet, which allows him to feel confident, which allows him to calm himself down because nature tells him that he has to move his feet when he's worried, but you're taking control of those feet and you're saying to him, you need to put them over here, you need to trot, you need to canter, you need to walk, you need to disengage. All of those 4 things are going to help your horse see you as a leader and are going to allow you to take control of those that situation. So the best way to do this is to start teaching your horse the exercises when he's in a calm situation. So maybe you could do it in the paddock so he's not worried about leaving the other horse, and get him a little bit confident and a little bit knowledgeable about those ground exercises that you're going to use, because then when you take him out and he is worried and you start doing something that he knows, the horse gets immediate comfort from that because he goes, I know this. We do this in the paddock. This is circling, this is lateral bend, this is hindquarter yield. So he gets confident from knowing that he knows what to do. So now you're empowering the horse, and this is what we're trying to do. No horse wants to feel separation anxiety, no horse wants to carry on, and no horse wants to feel a lack of confidence, okay? He doesn't, we take it personally. We think, oh, he's just an idiot and he, this and that and the other, and we call him all the names under the sun. But truly, the horse doesn't want to feel like that. So giving him a set of exercises that he is confident with allows you to help the horse become empowered. So it's similar to if you were taking a child on an aeroplane for the first time. And what you would do, or what I would do, is I would make sure that I had the child's favorite blanket, favorite DVD, favorite teddy bear, favorite colouring in book, and favorite snack and favorite treat. Because then when we get in the plane and it's all been strange because you've had to go past, all the security check-in and the airport's really busy and all that's been happening, what happens is you sit on the plane and you say to your child, here's your blankie, here's your teddy, here, and the kid goes, oh, I know all this stuff. Mustn't be too bad because this is just like being at home. I'm just in a funny chair in a different area. And that's what you're doing with those tools for your horse. You're saying, hey, here's the lateral bend. You know how to do this. And it gives you something to do as well. So both of you are confident in you taking control. So you're calling the shots, you're piloting the plane, you're being the captain and saying, we're going to do lateral bend. And the horse is saying, that's fantastic because I know how to do that. And that makes me calm because I know what to expect and what to do. It's not the time to teach him something new. Doing the exercises is not about working the horse until he's tired, okay? It doesn't work. A horse with separation anxiety is going to be filled with adrenaline. He's just going to sweat more. His heart rate's just going to increase more. You're just going to bother him a little bit more, and he's just going to want to get away from you even more. So don't try to make him tired. What you're trying to do is use his body and get him into a confident, comfortable state, so he goes back to wanting to conserve energy, which is a horse's natural state. Conservation of energy is a horse's natural state. As I said, you want to start working where the horse feels confident first. And the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to removing a horse from a paddock is the window of tolerance. So all of you would probably be familiar with starting to lead your horse out of the paddock, and he's fine, and then boom, you get to a spot and he goes, no way, I'm not going past this spot because my mate's too far away now. Now, for some horses that have it really bad, like I said earlier in the video, I've seen horses that have started to stress when they're not 10 meters from their paddock mate, and that's fine. That's the edge of the window of tolerance. So what you'll start to do when you're starting to do these ground exercises is you'll actually start to do them within the window of tolerance, and then day by day or session by session you'll start to move a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further away, and soon enough you'll be able to work the horse away from where you want to work him, basically in the arena or something like that. Okay. I want to touch briefly on the ideology of working the horse near the horse that he wants to be with, and then taking him away to rest, which is a technique that has been successful in the past. And I want to talk about it in regards to horses with high level separation anxiety that isn't going to work to cure that horse. A horse that simply wants to go back to the paddock because he'd rather be in the paddock than be out working with you or working, that's not separation anxiety. And so that's just the horse saying, I want to be over there, I want to be over there, I want to be over there. Okay, so that can be helped. You can change that desire by working the horse in the paddock and then taking the horse away to rest, because then the horse starts going, well, hang on a minute, the work's occurring in the paddock, I'd like to be over here to rest. But when you've got a horse with separation anxiety, it's not going to have the same effect, because a horse with separation anxiety is saying death over here, life over here. Death over here, life over here. So simply working him over in the paddock is not going to fix his desire to want to be in the paddock, because it's a different motivation. When you become a leader that he respects and trusts, he's not going to worry about leaving the herd. I can assure you of that. So the horses, now we're moving on to horse number 2, the horse that stresses when you leave him alone in the paddock. So again, I'm going to say it's very, very normal for a horse that's left alone in the paddock to be highly stressed about being left alone in the paddock. Ultimately, you've taken the only thing that he knows away. That's his buddy, that's his protection, that's his world, and you've said, we're leaving you there to get eaten by the wild dogs tonight, because he doesn't know that you're only going for an hour. He thinks, I've been left. Horses live in the moment. They live in real time. So he doesn't have a cognitive process that allows him to say, oh, they'll be back in half an hour, unless it's been repeated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So if you only do it every now and then or whatever, that's not going to be a thought in his mind. He's just going to say, hang on a minute, you've left me to be alone. I don't want to be alone. So again, the herd situation is going to help with the horse that's left alone in the paddock. But say you've got a horse that is stressed even when they're in the paddock with another horse, or say you've got a horse that you might have a horse in a paddock over here and you put the horse in the paddock just here and they can still see each other, and he can't even go into a holding pen or a round yard and be left alone for 5 minutes without having a real worry about it. This is what we call a lack of confidence. And the method that I use and the method that I've come up with to help horses deal and manage this situation is an interruption process. So basically, what we do is we need to allow ourselves a certain amount of time, because it can be a lengthy process. And on the first few sessions, what I want to do is be able to interrupt the horse several times in a row, so he learns that I'm going to do that. So I'm going to work now on the worst case scenario of a horse that's extremely frantic when even the paddock mates are still within view. You know, they're only 10 meters away, and they're just, you know, beside themselves. So we're going to work on that principle, and you're going to adapt it for your horse depending on how much worse than that he is, or if he's better than that. You're just gonna work and start working where your horse is at right now. So I'm gonna start in a worst case scenario. So what you want to do is make sure that you've got time, and you want to make sure that you've got the ability to be near the paddock. So when I've done this in the past, what I've done is I've taken my laptop with me, because I've always got plenty of work to do. I've taken a chair, I've taken a laptop, and I've gone, okay, I'm going to work this for, you know, half a day or whatever, and I'm going to sit here with my laptop working, and every time I need to go and work with the horse, I'm going to step in there and interrupt, and then I'm going to step out and I'm going to work again. So that's how I have successfully done it in the past. I've hung nearby, I've been very nearby the horse. So the first thing that you need to do, and it's better if you've got a second person, but if you don't, it's fine, is get someone to take the other horse away, so the horse begins to get bothered by that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hop in there with the horse, and depending on how comfortable you are I like to do this at liberty, but if you don't have any liberty techniques, don't try something new. It's got to be something that you're confident with and something that you know. So I prefer to do this at liberty, but you can do it with your online skills as well. You're going to go into the paddock, you're going to pop the halter on, and you're going to start going through some of the ground exercises. So it might be your park, it might be your hindquarter yield, the ones that we've talked about earlier in regards to the other horse. Now you're going to be working those ground exercises in the paddock with the horse that's frantically calling out because he's been left behind. So what you're going to do is you're going to get him to a point where he begins to calm down. I'm not talking he's 100%, you know, sleeping online. That's not particularly what we're aiming for. What we're trying to do is lower his state. So you can picture the frantic horse. He's whinnying out, he's carrying on, he's doing all sorts of things. What we're trying to do is get him to the point where he's looking at you and going, oh, okay, hey Tanya, you're here. And he's spending time looking at you and being okay with looking at you and focusing on you and not screaming out to where the other horse is. So you're going to use those ground exercises or whatever you're confident with. You're going to use those to get him to that state. And then you're going to take the halter off and you're going to stay in the paddock and just stand near him. And hopefully he's going to go and walk away and graze. And if he walks away and graze, you might hang in the paddock for a little while, and then you might hop out of the paddock and go ahead and, hey Shalise, you might hang in the paddock for a little while, and then if he keeps grazing, you're going to go ahead and go back to your chair or back to your book or laptop or whatever it is that you've decided to do, and you're just going to casually observe him. Now, worst case scenario, I've had this happen where you take the halter off the horse, he looks at you for another minute or so, and then he says, nah, and he's off again, pacing up and down and carrying on. So you go ahead, you put the halter back on, or me personally, I prefer to do it at liberty because I'm quite comfortable with liberty. But basically, I'm going to start interrupting the horse's behavior. I'm going to help him through it. I'm not punishing him for it. I'm not going to chase him around. I'm not going to make him more frantic. I'm not going to add to his adrenaline. What I'm going to do is interrupt the behavior so the horse can come down from that peak state and engage with me again. And then I'm going to stop again. So whether I'm at liberty or whether I'm on the halter, I'm going to wait for him to be in a better state of mind. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to step away again, take the halter off, and I'm going to step away again. So we've had horses in the past where I've had to stay in the paddock, and I might do this 2 or 3 times, and as the horse gets better, the time in between will get better. So he'll go off and graze for 5 minutes, and then he'll say, oh, I'm alone again, and he'll be off again. So you'll have to interrupt that behavior. and then he'll be off and he'll graze for 10 minutes, and then he'll be, oh, I'm alone again, and you'll have to interrupt that behavior. So what you're doing is you're helping to interrupt that that adrenal state. You're helping to interrupt that state. You're bringing him down to a calm state, but then you're allowing him to process that on his own. Because what happens is if you stay there patting him and all you're doing is transferring his codependency off one horse to you. So then when you leave the paddock, he's going to start freaking out because he's on his own. What we're trying to do is empower the horse and make the horse be confident in being on his own for a period of time, however long you're going to take the other horse out and work it for. So as this process goes on, as I said, the ones that I've done successfully at home, I've had horses sent to me for this issue. They've been in an arena, or they've been in the paddock near my house, and I sort of wander away, I observe them from a distance, and then as they start to get worried, you can start to pick and choose your timing when you're going to interrupt that behavior. Because as you get more and more successful with this technique, what you'll start to see is, instead of the horse going, oh my God, I'm alone, and going straight into a flat out gallop and running up and down the fence, and like I said, I had one, knock into the standoff electric fence and knock into the stable because she was just running blind. She didn't even know where she was. She was that frantic about, a horse being taken away. You'll start to see the horse develop more confidence, and he'll sort of put his head up and go, okay, I'm alone. He might give a whinny, but then he might start to eat grass again. So this is the process that we're trying to develop in the horse. I call it self-soothing. So obviously all the parents out there would know that term from babies. So this is the same thing that we're trying to afford the horse. We're trying to teach him to interrupt his own pattern of behavior, and we're trying to help him learn how to self-soothe. So you'll see him put his head up and whinny, and then he might go back to eating, and then he'll put his head up and whinny or look about again, and then he'll go back to eating, and then he might go, oh no, I've got to walk the fence line, and he'll start walking. And so that might be where you interrupt him. Then the next day you might see him do it again, and he'll start walking the fence, but then he'll go, oh, I don't need to walk the fence, I'm going to go and graze. So little by little, this interruption method helps the horse to learn to manage his own self. So we've had to do it with a couple of horses. Like I say, I've had them sent to me, or I've had people call me to go out to their properties when I used to do house calls, or I used to do private lessons, and we've had situations where we've had to be right there in the paddock with the horse because the horse is in such a frantic state about a paddock mate that he can still see that's 15 meters away, that I've had horses run up and down fence lines and cut their neck open on barbed wire because they just don't even know what they're doing. So I'm talking about extreme cases. But now those same horses, I'm still in contact with those owners, with all of the owners that I've used this method on, and all of the horses have remained, I don't like to use the term cured, but all of the horses have remained confident and happy, and those owners are now able to take other horses away and do all sorts of things, and those horses are able to manage themselves, so they're able to self-soothe. So what can contribute to the issue, and what can help, what causes the horse to get to such a frantic peak state, is that one day we go out to the paddock and we take the paddock mate away, and the horse starts calling and screaming and carrying on, and we finish what we're doing with the paddock mate. Maybe he was just getting shoes put on, and we put him back in the paddock. So what happened was, the horse in the paddock learnt when he was in his peak state of calling out and whinnying and carrying on, that the horse came back. So it worked. Okay, that behavior worked for him. So what we're trying to do is, and what is important to do in this situation when you're actually managing the situation, is to make sure that you do not bring that second horse back while the horse is in a peak state. Because if you go through all of this and say, oh, I've done the training, and wander off to go get the second horse, and old mate in the paddock starts carrying on because you've left now, and you put the horse back in, all of that training is not going to be as valuable as it would have been, because you're going to reward that behavior by putting the horse back in the paddock. So it's not going to work to take the horse out of the paddock and just wait until the horse in the paddock calms himself down without doing any kind of interruption, because he won't. He will just keep on running and carrying on and carrying on and carrying on. And he could cause himself or other people some injury. So what you want to do is work on the interruption technique, wait until he's in a calm state, and then go ahead and put the other horse in the paddock. Because what could have caused your horse to get to this state in the first place was just the simple action. We don't even think about it. Like I say, we pull the other horse out for a particular task, like going for a ride or getting wormed or getting shoes on, and the horse is carrying on, and we think nothing of, oh, well, I'm finished my job, so I'll go ahead and put the other horse back in the paddock, and then the horse in the paddock has been rewarded for that frantic behavior. So it's really important to time that really well and reward the behavior that you want, which is basically when the horse is in a calm state, then the paddock mate will go on in. So depending on how bad the situation is, it might take a few sessions. And as I said, when I initially do it with a horse, and I've helped a horse using this interruption method as well, that was actually a self-mutilator. So it was a horse that got into such a state that he would attack himself. He used to rip big chunks out of him, literally. He used to rip big chunks out of himself. And I use this same interruption method to help with his retraining. So I used to sit there the first few days that he was at my property. I sat outside and I made sure that I was working outside near the arena. And as soon as I saw him start to get bothered and look like he was going to start doing self-mutilation, I would step in and I'd do a little liberty with him. I'd wait until he was at a state where he was nice and calm, and then I'd go ahead and walk out of the paddock again, or out of the arena again, and I would sit down and do my work and observe him. Now, the first day, I probably had to get in there, I don't know, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, or whatever. And but that might only be for 5 minutes at a time, but it is a long process because you have to keep going in and out and in and out and in and out. And then by the end of this horse came and he had rugs on to stop him from biting. He had a cradle around his neck to stop him from biting. It stopped him from turning his head. And he had, and he wore a muzzle as well. So he had 3 things on him to stop him from attacking himself. That's how bad that he had got. He was going to get put down. And so we thought we'd try and intervene. By the 4th day, I think it was, I had that horse with no muzzle, no cradle, and no rug on, and he could happily exist all day like that. And I put the rug on at night just because it was winter and he was rugged anyway. But by day 4 of using that technique, that horse was able to exist all day without needing me to interrupt his behavior. By the end of the first week, I was happily able to leave him on his own and, you know, go down the street and go to the shops and do whatever I was doing. And I was quite confident in the knowledge that he wasn't going to start attacking himself. So it is a really powerful technique when it's done properly, but it can be very time consuming as well. But I'm guessing that those of you that are watching this video and that have these problems with horses, that you really want to try and help your horse get over this separation anxiety, and it is something that can be fixed. I don't like using the term fixed because I don't think they're broken, but you know what I mean. So it might take several days and it might take a few hours over several days, but then once you've started to do that, you will notice a great change in your horse. And those of you with the horse number 3 that suffers from both being left alone in the paddock and when he's out, you'll be working on both of those things. So you'll be taking him out of the paddock and working in that window of tolerance, and you'll also be working within the paddock and taking the paddock mate away and working on his confidence. One's a leadership issue, one's a confidence issue. So I hope, Helen's just commenting there, it worked brilliantly for Chad. So Helen's one of the people that we did have a lot of success with, and he was a horse that did run up and down fence lines, and he would cut his neck. He didn't even know that he was doing it because all he was focused on was getting back to a paddock that was... We put him in one paddock and his paddock mate was a driveway width away from him. That's how close the paddock mate was, and he could not exist in the paddock without trying to get out of it and get back to his paddock mate. So he's fine. We did a lot of time. Helen put a lot of hours into that horse, and she spent a lot of time at the paddock working with him. He was a horse that was at the extreme level. When we first started doing the training, Helen had to stay inside the paddock with him, and we had to start resting him with us being just present in the paddock, and then we'd move a bit further away, and then she had to go on the other side of the fence, and then she was able to go up to the house, and so on and so forth, which sounds like a really extreme and long-winded way of fixing this problem, but as I said, it is successful. It is a successful method, and it's a method that is empowering to the horse. I don't want to make the horse choose between working really hard in the paddock or being with me. You know what I mean? That for a horse with separation anxiety, that's just putting a band-aid over the problem. A horse with separation anxiety, like I said, for him it's life and death. So for him, it's not going to change his thought pattern. What we're trying to do here is change the horse's thought pattern. So I hope that you got some good tips out of this video, and I hope that you're able to apply the methods, and please keep in touch with me and let me know how you go in regards to it, and feel free to send me messages or whatever, and keep in touch or ask questions and things like that. That's what we're here for. That's why we do the live show. If you would like an information sheet about what we have talked about tonight, please send in your email address and I will send you the information sheet. Keep in touch with us on Facebook by not only clicking the like button, but clicking on the follow button. And that way you will get, thanks Leah, that way you will get notified when we're doing the live. So we're pretty active at the moment on across our all of our feeds. So on Monday we're doing the live shows, and that's at 7 o'clock every Monday. If there's a particular topic that you'd like to see us cover, please send it in and I'll do my best to put it on the list. If on Wednesdays we send out a newsletter, and it's always got an article in it, and it's also got the list of clinics and things like that you can attend that might be coming up in your local area. And then on Fridays, we always upload a new YouTube video. So they're the three things that we provide each week from Tanja Kraus Horsemanship. And I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to share it. Like I say, I will, when I hit the finish button, it'll ask me if I want to put it on the replay. Abby, no problem. I'll send you. Beth, yes, I'll send it to you as well. And someone just asked a question, but now it's gone off my my little messages, so I'm sorry whoever that is, but I'll try and catch you in the comments in a minute. Feel free to share it, and thank you again for watching and bearing with me. I've taken an hour again. I really thought this was only going to take half an hour, and those of you that were with me on the weekend, I was joking about making it be only a half an hour because I'm desperate to go and watch the season premiere of MasterChef. So I was trying really hard, but I failed dismally again. But like I always say, it's a lot of information to get out there, and I do want to cover the topics comprehensively. I don't want to just be giving you a half of an information and you know, leaving it at that. I'd rather run over time and miss MasterChef and hopefully give you some really good information that you're able to apply to your own horses. So thank you so much again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you next Monday night if I don't see you before. Talk to you soon. Bye.